You can live a life full of love and light if you just let the Spirit guide you. It's the remedy where you'll find peace, but you must let the Spirit guide you.
Who made y'all priests?
What's up, world? This is our Fafore.
What's going on, good people? This is our Oseun. Welcome back to the Who Made Y'all Priest podcast, where we talk about our spiritual journeys, our everyday life experiences, and the issues of the time from the perspective of two people who just happen to be priests. Fafore, what's going on, man?
I'm tired, boss.
Us both. Us both, man. What's going on?
Man, so both of us moved this past weekend. And on Sunday, I woke up and asked E5, what wisdom it had for me that I could internalize and apply.
Right.
And it spoke to me through the Holy Ojugbona Bede. So, when I got that Odu, because I was busy, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't really sit down and meditate with it, right? Because I was starting the packing process and the whole nine. And what usually comes to mind when I see Ojugbona Bede is, telling the truth, honesty, having integrity, humility, all about character, right? Have a good character. As long as I have good character throughout the week, I'll be good, right? Both of them in the East, so I'm gonna be moving forward. I got that because the previous 2 weeks I had legs of Oyeku, right? About endings. I knew it was coming to an end because my time at my other place that I've been for 3 years was coming to an end, and it was time to move on. So I get this Odu. I'm moving forward. Good character. Be honest. Humility. Be humble. All that good stuff. I'm good to go. Now, in the normal circumstances, when I see Ojugbona, I do think of some obstacles, right? Some blockages. I just thought that was going to be some light stuff in regards to the move. Nah, it was all about obstacles. It was nothing about integrity, nothing about humility, being honest. It was all like, yo, it's going to be some obstacles in your way. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to persevere. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, man, this move was the worst move I've ever made. And I had movers.
Right.
That's the crazy part. Not only did I have movers, but then I also had some fraternity brothers on Saturday help me move some stuff that I didn't want to move myself. You know what I'm saying? Or I didn't want the mover to move, like plants, some things with, my statues, some little stuff, right? So I moved all that. Yo, it was crazy. It was crazy. I had to move. I wasn't all the way packed. So I was scrambling, and I had the cleaners come on the same day. Because in my mind, let me just get it all out the way in one day, spend the rest of the time unpacking. Man, I ain't unpacked. I just got done like officially moving out of the old crib yesterday. I had to go by the house, pick up a couple things, drop off keys and stuff like that. I had to get my hammock and little stuff like that I had forgot. Man, it was wild. And you moved, so I know you had your own ups and downs.
Man, like I told you, I know why, as my spiritual self, I chose Oya to be my guardian Orisha to help me deal with change. I do not do well with change, man. And it was a good move and a bad move. The movers were excellent. They did everything that they needed to do. They got everything packed fast. They got everything packed at the old house, unpacked at the new house. in the time frame that I needed them to do it in, and all of that, man. It just everything just seemed uh rushed. It seemed rushed, and just like you, I'm not unpacked. I got stuff everywhere. My garage is full of stuff. I can't find anything. It's just it's crazy. I feel like I can't even eat right. Like where the plate's at is crazy, man. It was a good move because I needed to move. If said that I needed to move. Yeah, but it was some obstacles, blockages, and delays for me too, man. Definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Definitely.
asked Ifa like twice. Is it time to move? And both times, like Ifa was like, not yes, but hell yes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Plus, I was ready to go anyway, but I just asked Ifa. And it's the crazy thing with me, like I don't like change. And when I tell people that know me, they be like, "What you mean you don't like change?" Because my life has been full of change, and that's my Odu, like my Ishe Fa Odu and my priesthood Odu is all about change. Now, I like to have, because I'm a Virgo, so I'm big on having my routines, having a system down, doing things like that. So I hate change. However, not to the point that I will allow myself to not be in a good situation, have less, not step out and do something else. So I'm not a fan of it. I always say I hate change, but this is my 5th move in 10 years. That includes a cross-country move. That means a move across the state of Texas and things of that nature. So I'm not a fan of it, but I'm not afraid to do it, and I will do it. But I do like to have my routine. I like to chill. So hopefully I only got like one more move in me for like a long time.
Yeah, I haven't moved as much as you have in the last 10 years. I think I've been home 11 or 12 years. I made some slight moves. Like I lived in some apartments in Greenspoint, and I moved apartments inside the same apartments over a few years. But this is probably our only our 3rd move in 10, 11 years or something like that. But I hate it, man. I love my routine. I love knowing where things are, especially that not knowing where things are. Man, I hate that, man. I thought I sent it to you. I saw a video on TikTok of a man looking in the refrigerator telling his wife that there's no butter. And she comes to the refrigerator and say, "There's no butter. Here it is right here. It's sitting right there in the front of the refrigerator." And his words were, "But that's not where it goes." And that's how I am. I'm looking where it's supposed to be. I'm not looking at all these other places. Tunnel vision, one track mind. I'm looking for what I'm looking for. So when things are not in their place, man, my Ori is just man, I'm out of it, man. I'm out of whack. So I'm really out of whack right now, man.
Absolutely. My morning routine has been off. I finally set up my mat. I can't find my Obies that I normally have, so I got some backup Obies. I was able to find those, so I've been using that. I haven't meditated all week, and I meditate normally every morning, so at least 15, 20 minutes in the morning. Haven't done that all week, so my schedule has been off. I plan tomorrow to get back into like my real routine, and hopefully through the weekend, everything will be, well, I ain't gonna say, I'm not expecting everything, but the majority, the things that really affect my day-to-day will actually be in its proper place.
Yeah. I don't have any of my shrines set up. All my shrines still in boxes. My mat still packed up. Everything is still packed up. The only thing that's not packed up is like, I put the bed together, set up the stuff in the living room and stuff like that. I still got to get up and go to work in the mornings. So I'm usually leaving the house in the morning, probably 4:20, 4:25. I'm leaving the house. I'm gone.
Right.
So yeah, so I got to give me some sleep. But this Saturday though, Friday evening and Saturday, all day Saturday, I'm gonna spend some time setting up my E5 room, setting up my books, and getting everything in order so I can get back to my routine also.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, hey, you ready to go ahead and get this episode started?
Man, I'm ready to do it, man. It's gonna be a beautiful one here.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and do it.
Baba, Bora
Hey,
Boya.
Baba.
I bet told you what's happening, brothers.
Man,
Nothing much.
how you doing, Baba?
I'm all right, brother. I'm all right. Watching the sunset.
We appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule. We know you busy. We're glad we were able to catch you, man. We appreciate you spending some time with us.
I appreciate the invitation, man. Yeah.
Hey, now, Baba, what you got on?
Well,
What kind of
funny.
shot? And the reason why I asked, because I was about to pull out my Who Made You Priest t-shirt, right? I had it pressed out. I mean, it was casket sharp, right? It was ready. And then my intuition, because I've been working on my divine feminine, and I'll be tapped in with my intuition. And my higher self said, hey, do you know who you interviewing today? And I'm like, yeah, I know who I'm interviewing. Oh yeah, this t-shirt ain't gonna fly because he gonna come in here with the full African joint on. You know what I'm saying? So you're gonna be in here looking stupid. So I said, all right, you know what? Let me change.
Well, it's part of my energy, it's part of my Odu that I must always look beautiful, right? I must always wear beautiful clothing. So, especially when public facing, I try to honor that when laundry's done. So here I am. But this is a cloth that came out of the Ifa festival from Ode Remo, like maybe over 10 years ago. When I had traveled there, it was part of the the cloth for Ifa, for their Ifa festival, so I was able to receive it, and I had it sitting for years, just around, and I just recently got it and made into something. So that's what I'm rocking today.
Yeah, well, you're looking good, and I'm glad I listened to my Uri.
Yeah, so now he gonna have something to say to me about being in a t-shirt.
I don't say nothing to you. Your Odu is your Odu. You know what I'm saying? Your comfort is your comfort. Your show is your show.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Your podcast is your thing. Do you be you in whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Bob, for our listeners who may not know who you are, please introduce yourself to the family. We want all the names. Give them all. You know what I'm saying? Give it all to them.
Okay. So my parents named me Erwin Edward Anthony Thomas. 13 years ago, when I initiated the Ifa, I began to accumulate a lot more names. So it's Awo, Fasanmi, Obani, Ajigunwa, Shangobemi, Egbeyemi, Okumbumi, Odumosun, Obidosin, some titles: Ojugbona of OIDSI, worldwide. My grandmother, whose birthday who's 99 years old today, called me. Yeah. She's a beast. We love her for it. She would call me Winner. So I've had many monikers in my many lives, but yeah, that's me. And I'm speaking to y'all from the Pacific Northwest, Auburn, Washington, on the Homish land, Muckleshoot territory, in the Pacific Northwest.
That's dope. Now, you mentioned Ojugbona. For the people who don't know, maybe don't practice Ifa, can you explain to them what that is?
Ojugbona is a Sheshe, or traditional chieftaincy title. It's one who opens the way, right? So as you both have experienced, one who sort of guides one into Ibodu, and it's been an interesting journey. So within OIDSI, but it's also not a permanent position, right? It's something that as we expand, things shift. So I'm actually that title is being honored to our brother Baba Fabalasi for his excellent works and his just natural both leadership and just teaching passion and love for the craft. So yeah, there'll be another chieftaincy down the road with a different function, but for now, that's what that is.
That's dope. That's dope. Now, here on the Who Made Y'all Preach podcast, we like for everyone who comes on to share their spiritual journey. You know, so how did you progress to the space where now you practice Ifa and the priest of Ifa?
What I call that is a series of fortunate events. So it began probably around 2000. You know, to be honest, I think it really started in my childhood, even in my birth, right? So my fraternal grandmother, the story goes that my mother was in labor. I was the first child, and she was having some challenges. She was in Manhattan and at Columbia Presbyterian, and my maternal grandmother, paternal grandmother, sorry, sent my uncle, one of my uncles, to pick up some herbs to help support me coming smoother and I guess faster. I think she was in labor for like 24 hours. And so I always say that I was sort of born into to the medicine of Ifa, to herbalism, to Oseun's power. And she was, of course, employing, her knowledge. Having my family's from Guyana, South America, so her indigenous, Afro Guyanese wisdom, and so that was the beginning. But then, I'm firstborn and blah blah blah. So around 2005, maybe, when I moved back to the New York area, there was a couple of years of really interesting introspection. I didn't have all the wisdom that we have now, all the tools we have now, all the ways to like think about things that we now employ, or that I now feel like I'm getting to know how to use. And I was having some really challenging times, feeling kind of heavy. I would definitely say depressed, just navigating some things. My first craft is performance, so I was an actor professionally and was trained in that. And my father came to me, and this is some years after the same grandmother that I'm talking about passed, and he said he found a cousin of hers who was a priest in the Hudan tradition, which would be like similar to Shango Baptist, but like the African traditional practice in Guyana. So, he said, we found, and by we, he's talking about himself and his 12 siblings, because I've come from a really large family. They had run into their aunt, really, in Brooklyn, and they had started going to see her for readings, and that I should go. Now, if he hadn't said that it was my grandmother's cousin, I probably would have been skeptical about it. But I went, and I met this woman, and she gave me my first, I guess, ever spiritual based reading. It's pretty miraculous, the things that she had shared. Her style of divination and also of teaching was very much like, give the information. And I think that first reading, she was like, you need to do what I'm doing, but she didn't explain what that was. She also gave me the instruction to go to the ocean and take flowers, coins, and perfume, that I should bathe in the ocean, make the offerings, and bathe in the ocean. So I went to Coney Island. I probably picked some flowers off of the garden in front of my house, and got some coins and some oils, and went to the ocean and prayed, and gave the offerings, and took a quick dip in the ocean, and came out feeling lighter than I've ever felt. In that moment, felt like I was total spiritual cleaning. Right. So I was like, word, right? We did some other things with her, and I did some other things with her. She set a table, an ancestral table, where I had to get all this food and candle and pray and specifically to the ancestors. And my hope was that I would learn more, but we lost touch with her. primarily because I have a huge family, and they probably juiced her to the point where she was like, "Y'all is too much for me," which I understood because And I wrote her a letter, and I was like, "Listen, I get it. They're my family. I'm born into them. I get it. Um, but you let me know where I can go next. What else is up?" I didn't hear anything back from her. So from there, for the next year or so, I'm in the Lower East Side getting palm readings, going to the ocean when I can, right? Just looking for something, right? But not knowing what I'm asking for because she didn't necessarily share exactly all the things that were. And I got a particular reading that said from this I guess Eastern European woman who didn't try to tell me that I was going to die tomorrow. And she said a few things. She was like, "I can help you. You're going to meet a really tall man." And I'm like, and at the time I'm an actor, so I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna meet an agent, right? It's gonna be my break, right?" And she's like, "Sure." um, but she did her work. What she did, things did pick up for me career wise. Um, and then maybe a few months after that, I'm back in the Pacific Northwest doing a teaching artist gig, and I meet my now god sister who was working Iya Omitosin, and she's working with Ayana Vincent at her institute in DC, the Inner Visions Institute. And so I'm meeting her for the first time, and I'm here, Seattle's a second home to me, so I'm meeting her for the first time, but I'm feeling fairly comfortable in sharing with her the challenges that I'm navigating. And she seems to have a reference, right? It doesn't seem like she's not wilding out about it. She actually gives me some feedback that's interesting. One of the feedback that she said was that I should holler at this guy, Baba Femi. And at that point, like I said, I feel like I had spent more money that year on palm readings and different things than I actually earned. So I wrote Baba a letter, and I was like, "Listen, this is what I can tell you I've been through. This is what I'm navigating. If you can help me, cool. If not, no harm, no foul." And he was like, "I think I can help you." So shortly thereafter, I left the Northwest, and I was actually getting a reading from him. I was on an Amtrak train, I think coming from Philly to New York. And it was funny. He had asked me, at that time, he was doing, he was on the phone, and he was like, "Yeah, 2 pennies, give me 2 pennies, one shiny and one dull." He had me holding them in my hand. And that's how he picked the Osobo, the array. And he gave the reading, and what was dynamic about it, because I'd gotten so many type of spiritual readings at that time, was that he kept talking about energy, the energy around this, the energy around that, energy around this, and the future of the energy. And I was really impressed with the energy language. That got me. And because nothing is linear, maybe a few months before that, I was doing another gig with another elder of mine who's a Kemetic priest, and we were doing a project where we were working with young people. And he was like, "Your ancestors want to hear from you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "You need to set up an altar and blah blah blah." So when I found that the Ifa practice, as well as what that other elder had shared with me, were rooted in ancestral reverence, I was like, "That's what's up," because my grandparents raised me. Right, my parents were working a lot, but I have really close relationships with my grandparents. The one who turned 99 today taught me how to read, and was like it was just a lot of, so the idea that I can connect with these people who had transitioned was really exciting to me. And as Baba was traveling around the country, he would come to different places where he had godchildren or clients, and we kind of sit at his feet, and he would share information about Ifa. And it just made sense to me, right? I was never into a lot of Kemetic mythology or cosmology, or even the Greek stuff didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I knew sort of intellectually that one was taken from the other and blah blah blah, but some about this Ifa cosmology just clicked. It just made sense. And Chief Dawalade was also in New York at the time, so she would call me every once in a while, like give me these like, "Yo, what color shall go," and blah blah blah. And it just worked out. I would read daily pamphlets about little books about the Orisha, and then have my day on that particular day, and just watch to see how things played out and what I could see. And the self-study was really exciting, and every question that I had seemed to get answered. And I was exceptionally impressed with the fact that, even being a novice, having no context, that there was this divination system. I could just ask a question, right, and get the energy of whatever, which is amazing to me as somebody who likes to know, or who's curious, who has mad questions. So in 2009, I got my hand to Ifa. Again, the studying things seemed to lift career-wise. Things was dope. I got a really beautiful gig at the Metropolitan Opera. Shortly after that, Baba was taking a group of folk to godchildren to Nigeria to initiate as priest. I didn't know what that meant. But I was informed to ask Ifa, and Ifa was like, "It's a good look." So I was like, "All right, cool." I didn't know nothing from nothing, other than what I was being taught as an Abarisha, and the energy I was feeling with my ancestors, right? And so we had a trip scheduled for late January. I didn't have any clue how I was going to pay for it, and I got a second gig at the Metropolitan Opera that was lovely. But when I was going to audition for it, I didn't tell them that I was intentionally, that I was going to be going to Nigeria to become a priest, because that's not what you do. Because I didn't. But when I got the schedule, because opera is different than theater, right? So opera, you rehearse for a period of time, and then the actual performances, because they're so intense on the premier singers and such a big production, they happen. You have breaks in between, right? So it's not like 8 shows a week. And when I got the schedule, let's just say we had to be on a plane on January 27th. My last rehearsal for that opera was on January 26th.
Wow.
And I had to be back for the first show, let's say, on February 18th. The flight came back on February 17th.
Wow.
I remember calling Bob and being like, "Yo, this right here, this is beyond me."
Right.
And my ancestors had blessed me with the resources, because I got the gig and the rehearsal time was really long anyway, to be able to go. And so, I got on a plane, and then even being there felt very much like being amongst my grandparents, amongst my elders. Even though I didn't speak the language, I spent some time and lived in Africa, in South Africa before, so I wasn't blind to living in Africa. But the bush in Nigeria is a different thing. Yeah, and I went into initiation. Learned when I got on the mat that I needed to receive Tefa, which again I didn't know what that was, because all I knew was I was going to receive Obatala and Oshun. But they said that I needed to go to Tefa, and I didn't necessarily have the loot at the time, but they're like, "You can pay over time." So I was like, "Word." And there's a story to this day that's still in Oderemo, where whatever they told me to do, I was just down. So my Luo in Oderemo was like, "If we told you we had to punch you in the face, you would have said okay." So by this point, I'm like, I'm here. My ancestors set it up. Whatever I'm supposed to, I'm down for the adventure. I'm down for the discovery. I'm down. And then learning, since then, I've just been a student, right? I've just been fascinated by the science of it. I have an allergy to religion, but I'm fascinated to the science of it. I'm fascinated to how it opens you up to yourself, to your ancestors, to seeing deeper, to healing, on like having tools to do so, to utilize those tools, to develop character and heal relationships and build relationships. And it's just it's a beautiful, for me, has been a beautiful maturation that seems to be built from my curiosity. And so that's kind of been the road. And then as the first couple of years were always, because we come at this at the age that we come at, and it's sort of outside of our culture, at least for me, the Caribbean culture and the American culture. My assumption was like, I got to just do this. So I'm working and like waking up mad early and going to bed really late, being on the mat all the time, all the things that happen. And then a few years into that, I realized that my life previous to Ifa had prepped me for some of the core things, right? So being an artist was also a critical part of my lens. Babadari will tell you that, I have more 5s in my chart than he's ever seen, right? So creativity is not an option for me, right? So I'm an artist by nature, and it's very similar when you go into an art space, whether it's visual art or performance art. You go into a blank room, or you go on a blank page, you go into an empty space, and you create, right? You work between your intuition, you hone your body, your voice, your instrument, and focus and sacrifice a bunch of stuff. You can't go to the party, can't hang out because you got rehearsal. So I then started to blend sort of the knowledge that I have, some foundational stuff from a previous craft that can support me in this, and allow me to think in a creative way about the present day challenges that we face, right? So my intention is not to wake up one day and be, you know, and suddenly be in Nigeria, be Nigerian, speaking Yoruba or any of those things. My intention is to really carry the bad boy, this whole thing forward in a
Right.
way that is, you know, and I think OIDSI is a beautiful place for that, because Baba Femi teaches us similarly, you know, and asks us to apply these things to the world that we're in now for the intention of generations forward.
It's
So
funny
yeah,
that
that's
you mentioned though about not want to be Nigerian, speak Nigerian, and all that. Because when I came into OIDSI and you were there, because you were there at my Ishe 5, and that was the first time I got to meet you. And me, when I met you, I instantly was like, oh, he brings credibility to the organization, because we have an actual Nigerian who is part of OIDSI. And then later on, I found out, like, because we would talk to somebody that'd be like, yo, you know, such a Obani, and I'm like, who is that? And I'm like, oh, the African. And then they were like, no, he's not African. I said, yeah, you know the guy. No, he's not African. So I was like, man, this whole time I thought he gave us street cred, you know, and he fought because we had an actual Nigerian. So yeah.
Now I am absolutely a diasporic African.
Right.
People,
So I was
my
slightly
whole family.
disappointed when I heard that. Like, man, our street cred just went down the drain.
Yeah. You know, but there's you know, obviously because of historical context, you know, I'm a Caribbean child raised in the United States. Both parents you know, in the West Indies and in Guyana specifically, also indigenous to Guyana, so Arawak ancestors. And like I said, I lived in South Africa a little bit, so definitely have been blessed to have a diasporic experience. But you know, Guyana is an English-speaking nation or country, or recent, you know, the most recent colonial foolishness. And yeah, I see myself in you know, as we all do, seek ourselves within African spaces, and look for similarities and differences, and get the hard lessons that, you know, to be here, right, to be in this time, to be who we are, to be born on this soil is just as sacred as any place else. So I don't really, you know, I don't create boundaries. I recognize the cultural differences and I translate them as necessary, and I ask questions. But I hope I don't present myself as a nice like that I'm Yoruba.
No, hey,
Igbo or
you had on the good African guard.
Right.
I just was like, you know, me at this time I had not been out. Well, I've been to South Korea, but other than that, I hadn't been, you know, traveled out the country at that point. I was just like, I'm new to E5, so I was like, I didn't know this was a Nigerian tradition of the Yoruba people, and I was like, oh, boom.
not at all. not to my recent knowledge. We've been exploring the African ancestry, and on my father's side, it goes back to Gabon, West Africa. On my mother's side, we did the DNA for my grandmother my granny who just turned 99, and she 100% Mende, so from Sierra Leone. And then I believe my grandfather on that same side, I haven't done the work yet. It was probably mixed West African and indigenous to South America. So that's where the Arawak and Taino type situation goes in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, raised, born in New York, moved around a lot in the Northeast, came out to the Northwest for grad school, traveled a lot of beautiful places in Europe, and yeah, I'm a diasporic African.
Wow. You brought up healing, and season 3 we're talking about healing and how we can do that through all these different modalities. We watch you quite often, and you always talk about healing, especially healing from generational trauma. What has made healing such a focus for you?
Man, I mean, I was I'm still one of the most sensitive brothers I know, right? So choosing the family that I chose to come back to and the time that I chose to come back through it. Born in 1977, being raised by my grandparents, having such a massive family. Um, there was a lot of pain. There's a lot of aggression. There's a lot of my parents. My family came out of revolutionary times and came to this country chasing resources and being melanated in America in the West in a place where there's erasure and there's a lot of performativeness and there's a lot to heal from, right? There's a lot of historical post-traumatic trauma. I'm grateful for the language these days, but when we didn't have the language, it was just the sensitivity to the pain, right? And I'm not inherently like a melancholy person. I think I took the role within my family of levity, right? Of wanting people to be quote unquote happy or trying to work things out. And I was the one who like called family meetings at times or witnessed some of my elders calling family meetings and see them fall apart. See what happens when the matriarch and patriarchs of certain families pass and and how people start to fight towards each other and I was definitely a student of Dr. Jordan Gary Tyson, who does Leary rather, who did the post traumatic slave syndrome, and I've been blessed to meet a lot of psychologists and just healers um, who have given me language around why we are in the condition that we're in and why it's so difficult to be who we are. I was definitely born in a time where middle school, elementary school, I was a darkest probably person in the room, and even my own brothers and sisters, other Black folks who were lighter skinned with different hair or whatever, there was shame around that. And easily people was making fun of things. And it was just a lot of pain that I could feel, but I didn't have names for, right? There's a lot of hurt that I could sense that I didn't know where it came from. And so the idea that we could have a technology that is rooted in the source, or at least back to where maybe the inciting incident may be, the idea that we can look at our lives and our family structures and the family patterns, right? How mothers relate to daughters and fathers relate to sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, and look for those patterns. And you're like, I know there's something off, something's not right here, but we don't know what to do about it, right? So for me, IFA was a thing where I was like, well, we can go deep into energetically what's happening, and then what are the rituals or what are the practices or what are the ways of changing the way we think that can bring us back into a healing space, into a place that we can feel seen and heard and appreciated, and we can have generative conflict instead of this like I'm never talking to you again type stuff, or we can move past violence as the only way. As brothers, it's this for a long time I experienced that what's okay for us to feel is either anger or apathy, right? But there's no the full range of what it is to be human. We didn't have a whole lot of models for, and then masculinity is based on top of that, and it makes sense, right? Because we carry memory in our DNA, and those who came before us didn't have the privilege, didn't have the space. They were fighting for their lives survivals, right? So I noticed for myself generationally that I was always curious why there wasn't more conversation amongst my male elders around sort of emotionality, around love, around heartbreak. And what I learned was they didn't have the space for that. Right? They didn't have the space to really ask how you felt about something. And so our work, I feel, of our generation is the emotional justice, right? That's the next stage, right? Because we have this, they bought us the space to be able to have these intimate conversations, to really wrestle with some stuff that they were just trying to survive, right? So I think for me personally, I feel like this is I've always been drawn to different modalities of healing. And I found that when I study different modalities of healing, that they complement each other. I'm also I'm studying to be a flower essence therapist. I'm a huge practitioner and believer in sort of learning more about restorative justice practices. I'm learning more and more about indigenous focused trauma therapies, and all these things include ancestors and generational and collective and individual traumas and the framework is very different, right? It's not this individualistic, it happened to me. You know, you have to ask yourself, is it a personal thing? Is it a collective generational thing? Is it a intergenerational thing that you're just holding and feeling and sensing? So I feel like for us, because we know that we're working towards being our best selves and healing, that the tools are invaluable. So yeah.
Absolutely. You said a lot in that piece, and there's a lot of things that you talked about in that part that we're going to peel back the layers, because I think with this topic, a lot of people need to understand perspective. Like, you said things that if our perspective was different, we probably would just like kind of slide right past a lot of what you said. You've made mention of when you were born. You've talked about ancestors. You talked about intergenerational trauma, things of that nature. I think it's important to give the perspective that in the tradition that we practice, and a lot of the other indigenous practices, whether out of Africa or other places, we believe in reincarnation. In Ifa specifically, we believe that we are reincarnated through our ancestral lineage, through our blood lineage. I think that's important for people to really understand some of the things in which you said. You know, I've always said that if we understood that our children were our ancestors' return, who probably were even older or lived more lives than we did, then the way in which we would handle our children would be differently. If we understood that one day that we were going to be reincarnated, and we may end up as the child, the grandchild, the great grandchild of our one of our siblings that we maybe don't get along with, a cousin that we don't get along with, a child that we mistreated. If we understood that, we would treat one another differently, especially within our family. Speak to us a little bit about how you think we would move if we just had that perspective.
Well, I think the first piece is the knowing and the understanding that we choose to come back. That shifts everything, right? It's not this like, why is this happening to me? Why am I blah blah blah? You imagine you're like teenage angst, right? Where you're just like, why did I didn't ask to be here? Actually, you not only asked to be here, right? But it was divine dawn. It was a whole thing. You wanted to have some experiences, and you wanted to have some experiences because I believe, you know, as a spirit, that you saw places where you could do some good, right? Um, I imagine ancestors, honorable and elevated ancestors, to be constantly looking after us, being like, yo, you're taking it a little too personal, right? Yes, you were born into this. Yes, you may have experienced this terrible experience. This person didn't treat you well, but you keep trying to change the person, or you keep trying to like run away from it, or whatever. Come to the source, because I'm just me speaking as an ancestor. You know, imagining, you know, we know where it started. Hurt people hurt people. We remember how that person was raised and what happened either collectively or individually in the family, whether it's if they got ripped away from each other or somebody murdered, whatever it happened. We've been waiting for someone to invite us into the conversation so that we can then help heal in a way that's long lasting, right? That we can send you some dreams and some messages and some amazing events that will show you that, you know, the goal is to honor the fullness of it, seen and unseen. So I think that it begins with the fact that we chose to come here, and because we come into this dualistic reality, the light and the dark of it all, we have to experience a lot of we have to experience the dark, right? And I'm finding out in my own, you know, maturity that if I was going to distill it, I'm trying to create a world that was safe for my youngest, for a little me, right? I'm very much, and that's both, you know, a good and a funky thing, right? But I'm realizing more and more that it was the places where I didn't feel safe, the places where I, you know, and I'm just trying to create a world where it's okay for that little person to be okay, right? To get to be given more patience, to be spoken to as if it wasn't the first time that I was here, to be to my whys as a young person. I'm a Sagittarian, so my whys are real whys. They're not just like for the sake of asking, right? And I'm still, trying, and I'm watching my parents as I get older, they soften and they become more and more emotionally mature, especially when you hit that point where you're the age that your parents were when you feel like something went wrong, right? And I'm sitting here without the responsibilities and the burdens and the things that they, were navigating, and I have greater understanding. I was like, oh wow, okay, all right, this life thing ain't for punks. And so I think there's great when you invite in ancestral reverence, when you invite in a story that doesn't just begin with your birth, then you're inviting in more medicine, to help us to help the family to get to a place where that ancestor that's coming back wants to, like, everything is lush, right? You don't want to come back to something that's disheveled, right?
Right.
You want to come back knowing, like you said, that like I'm gonna have extra patience with this niece, nephew, daughter, son, because I want to come back to a place where they know how to, like, manage, right? They have good character, they have values, they have, what I'm saying, they remember who they are, they respect elders, right? I want to contribute to that so that when I come back, that it's just what we do. I hope that addresses your question.
Oh no, that absolutely it did. And it's funny that you mentioned some of the stuff that you did. I had an Akashic record reading, and I wanted to know, why did I choose to come back to be, born to the parents that I chose? And I'm significantly older than my parents. And I was told I just wanted to have the experience. Like, I just wanted to get here. You're a Sagittarius sun. I'm a Sagittarius moon. I have a lot of fives in my chart, and for me, my fives don't necessarily lead me to necessarily a creative space, but more of a space of being free and having experiences. So, I wanted to understand my relationship or lack thereof with my parents. And it was like, hey, you knew who they were when you came. You didn't care. You just wanted to be here because you wanted to have experiences. And that's what you're having. So it put everything in perspective for me.
Yeah, my five is not straight five. I got karmic fives, right? I got a few straight fives, but mostly karmic five, which again leads us back to, like, whatever I did in a previous incarnation. I like to say karmic five is oftentimes like you ate at the table of life but didn't pay your bill.
Yeah.
Right? You left the people at the table hanging, right? And so for me, it's with that karmic five that I'm gonna, one, experience and feel that sense, that Oshun five. I'm gonna feel relationships in a deep way. And so I have to learn to like really learn how to navigate those in healthy ways. Right. I can't just because I feel despondent or not well, assume that that's what the other person's feeling. I gotta learn how to communicate across that. I gotta learn basic lessons, and I have to have discipline inside of the process, because that 1 and that 14-1 means that you gotta have some devotion in order to make, and then that creates freedom, right? And so that challenge, that karmic space is not one to, like, dwell on, right? But it says to me that I'm not surprised now when I have these relationship challenges. The question is, how can I soften so that I can learn the lesson that I need to learn and get to the adventure?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really hope that this episode reaches a lot of people, because I think that once we can learn to shift our perspective just a little bit, just talking about the things that you're talking about, with the understanding that we chose to come here, that we chose our parents, that we chose the experiences that we would have, I think that we could look at life just a little bit better. And like you said, not to take it so personal, that things aren't they aren't accidentally happening to us, that we've chosen these things, and especially those darker, those things that we would consider darker experiences, that we chose those things to further our spiritual evolution. I think it's difficult for people to um, accept that. I've talked to people before about those type of things, and one of the things that they rebut with is, so are you saying that a child chose to die at 1 year old or at 6 months old? And I have to say, I'm telling you exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you exactly that's something that they chose. They chose to have that experience. So, you know, it's said that our ancestors are our first line of appeal and defense in the spirit realm. From your perspective, what does that mean, and how can we apply that?
All right. So first of all, did y'all do libations before we got on? Before I got on?
No,
No.
we did not.
All right. So let's do that. Right.
Oh,
So
Okay.
we can get guided in this. I got some water here. And I'm gonna pour. We give thanks to spare this cool water. We pray that emotions do not get the best of us. We pray that we will always find our level. We pray that we have cool hearts, cool heads, and cool spirits. We pray that the memories that are within us, the water that's within us, may lift up and give us the right words to speak at this time for all those who are listening. Ashe.
Ashe.
Omi tutu, ori tutu, ona tutu, ile tutu, cool head, cool heart, cool spirit. Ibashe. We give thanks to the spirit of the north, the south, the east, and the west. We give thanks to the earth and the sky. We give thanks to to our honorable ancestors, flesh of our flesh, bone of our bone, spirit of our spirit, blood of our blood. Those who have taught us to speak before we could speak, to feed ourselves before we could feed ourselves, to call our names before we can call our own names. We thank you for your sacrifice. We pray that you will guide us and be with us in this communication, in this conversation, that we may represent all of your struggles, all of your wisdom, all of your understanding, and all of your medicine. We give thanks to the spirit of Orisha. We give thanks to the spirit of Ifa. We give thanks to the spirit of Odumar. We give thanks to our teachers. We give thanks to Baba Femi Fayemi. We give thanks to all the leadership of OIDSI. We give thanks to all of our teachers along the way. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
re-ask the question. Oh yeah, bro. Re-ask the question.
So it's said, or we often hear people say that our ancestors are our first line of appeal and defense in the spirit realm. From your perspective, what does that mean, and how can we apply that knowledge?
Okay, so there's a few things in that. My father always talks about, but previous to the Christianity that permeates a lot, our intercessors, the people who we went to support us in day-to-day activities or family issues, were our ancestors. And then that shifted once we were made ashamed of those practices, right? So as far as our first line of intercessors, of people that we appeal to for what we need, no one knows like the people who raised you. Y'all raising your children, right? Your wisdom is not going to die with your body. Right? Energy can't be created or destroyed, just transferred from one form to another, right? And so if they know the technology of how to access that wisdom, right, then they know that you got them. No matter what, you got them, right? And then defense, they can see further than us. They can see beyond time and space. They can see what's coming. They remember why we chose to come here. They know our purpose, right? And they know, what's behind that uncle that's mean to you. They know what's behind that person that's been kind to you. They know when the things shift. They know when you mature to a certain point that you're pressing up against somebody else's, illusion. And so if you can have an open and honest conversation through the technology of ancestral reverence, if you can honor them and thank them for their sacrifice, if you can listen and learn actively, like, what was their life like? My grandmother, who's not yet an ancestor, at 45, which is the age that I'm at, left a country to go to a whole nother country that had cold like she'd never experienced, so that she could have opportunity for her family. Right? When I talk to my oldest uncle, and he tears come to his eyes when he talks about the sacrifices she made, and I'm not making this up. She was trained as a secretary, knew how to do secretarial stuff, but because of the context of the time, this is just coming out of colonialism in Guyana. She couldn't get a real job that would do anything for her. And so she had to take up cleaning houses, and she would walk. And I've walked this road. I've driven this road. 6 miles both ways to clean people's space, right? While raising multiple children, right? And then saving enough to come here, right? And still taking care of people. My grandmother would collect bottles. People would think that she was homeless because you can get 5 cents for them back in the glass bottles or whatever. We had a garage full of bottles. My grandmother never slept on that front, right? To provide, to care for. She taught me, like I said, to read. She taught me, how to clean up after myself. All these things. I went to kindergarten. They were like, "There's nothing we can do for you. You clearly have been," you know what I'm saying? And she's human, so she had her own lived experiences. She was a little heavy-handed. I learned to write with a ruler hovering over me. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of things. But if you can learn the science of those ancestors, what they went through, what they achieved, what they struggled with, whether, let's take it real basic, they were alcoholics or they had addiction issues, and if that runs through or they had, as we study, they may have had diabetes, right? And then we look at what diabetes means, right? They weren't getting the sweetness of life. They were working too much. Not surprising, right? Whether it be enslavement or whether it be, colonialism or post-colonialism, right? So all these things lived in their lived experience. Epigenetics tells us that we are more our grandparents' lived experience than our own parents. So we have to learn their stories. And we have to learn those stories in ways so that we can see what we're looking at and what the messages they have for us. Now, some people are gifted with sit at their altar and they hear things, right? That's not necessarily my situation. I have I forget what they call it, but mine is it all just comes at one time in a knowing, right? I don't know how I knew it, but I didn't know it 2 minutes ago, but I kind of know it now. Some people hear things, some people feel things, some people, all the types of stuff. But the more that you can connect with those people who you share blood with, who live in your bones, egun mean bones, right? Who live in the bones, those people who you were connected with in the umbilical cord, who, what I'm saying? When you more connect with those people, the more you know yourself. Right. And primarily, that's for me the primary relationship. Even if it's to teach you how to hold boundaries, how to not be subject to certain things, whatever it is, they're your first class. You chose them. Right? You chose them and they got some stuff to teach you. And you got to respect them for the basic thing. They say that we thank our fathers for bringing us and our mothers for keeping us. Right? Because that's all they really needed to do. Everything after that is lush. Right? So there's great technology, there's great wisdom, right? And we and then you get into the actual rituals, right? Basic stuff, right? Making sure there's fresh water there, calling their names, asking for support and listening to your dreams, telling them straight ahead. Baba Patrice Malonoma Somé would always talk about. He'd be like, he notices in the West that we're really timid when we go to our ancestors. We're kind of like, could you please? And he's like, nah. It's like, tell them what you need.
Yes.
Right? Be assertive. You need this. It's not a want, it's a need. Right? This or better. Right? Or show me what the path is. But it's not this when you get around to it. it's not
Absolutely.
Right? It's
absolutely. And when I go to my ancestors, I'll tell them, hey, help me with this, but I don't need the recklessness, right? I don't need you to blow my car up to try to teach me a lesson about this. Nah. Just bring it to me softly, right? Come to my dream or whatever. Don't give me none of the wildness, but I need this.
Yeah, right. And there's medicine in there, man. All of my ancestor dreams, especially early on in my priesthood, they always had food in them. Right. So there's medicine in my family around food. My father always spoke about always have food because you don't know who's going to show up. Right. Always be able to feed people. Right. And so I'm not surprised that I had, the first time I had a dream about his mother, there was mad food. Right. And so I take food as a medicine. It's not just preparing, we got to eat. Right. It's the love that goes into it. It's the healing that goes into it. Yeah. So everybody's got their own medicine coming out of their ancestral lineage. Right. There's a prompt that I do that's fun in different settings. It's I was born into and I got here by. Right. So you got to finish those statements. Right. The born into, whether it's social economic, whether it's interpersonal, whatever, and you really go deep, you realize all the conditions that you chose to come into. Right. But the got here by is the medicine that got you to this place now. Right. So there's some medicine in my family around food. My father always spoke about always have food because you don't know who's going to show up. Right. And so I take food as a medicine. It's not just preparing, we got to eat. Right. It's the love that goes into it. It's the healing that goes into it. Yeah. So right?
Mm.
And that medicine wasn't necessarily all yours. Somebody taught you how to do that. Somebody should taught you what not to do. So there's great medicine in our ancestors, and I think that when they recognize that you're putting in the work, they will meet you more than halfway.
Mm. You know, a lot of people hear us talk about these initiations into these different spiritual priesthoods, into Ifa, into the Orisha, into all these different things. But a connection to our ancestors is a birthright, and we don't need initiation for it. Speak to us about some of the things that we could be doing, basic things that we could be doing to better connect to our ancestors.
You're absolutely right. If you got a belly button, you got ancestors.
Right.
So, one is always leaving a portion of your meal for them, right? So if you're out in a restaurant or if you're eating at home, to leave a small portion for them. For me, it's because they taught me how to eat. They prepared food for me when I couldn't feed myself. So that circle never needs to be broken, right?
Mm.
And to remember that I'm never by myself when I'm nourishing myself. Another one is, ancient libations, which lives in our collective DNA. Taking the time as we just did. You just need some water, some prayer. If you know the names of your ancestors, whether you know them or not, they know you.
Right.
Praying into water and asking them specifically, hey, this is what I need. And since water holds memory, right? Please, as I sip on this water, let me be reminded of certain things. Doing family trees, going and doing the legwork of asking the elders in your family about stories from their childhood.
Mm.
We also grow up because it's the consequence of being human and the trauma. There's a lot of secrets, right?
Right.
And so some of that quest is learning how to be patient with people's memories and how they're navigating, how that pain may have affected, or that story that nobody talks about may have affected them.
Mm.
And so really being a story keeper, right? I like to I've always been, because I was raised with my grandparents, I've always been about the questions, but the questions didn't come for free, right? I wasn't getting no story if I didn't sweep the floor. Right? It wasn't right. And so knowing that there's a reciprocity there, going to the grave sites, whether you knew them or not, right? And honoring them, remembering them, calling their names, teaching your children about them. I think those are some basic things that we can do. I think that getting getting a reading and really paying attention to the category of Egun and ancestors, what it is they're trying to teach you, what they need you to learn, what they need you to look out for. And then to see the gift, and this is something I've learned and continue to learn through Baba Femi. In his book, Who is Sambo? It's a beautiful narrative, it's kind of Octavia Butler style, speculative fiction, where a group of people in the 80s go back into time in Plantation, Texas, and become their ancestors. And they knew each other from being on the same plantation. Some of them were literally related. And they're beefing in modern day time, like the late 80s. And they're all the archetypes of our community: the basketball player, the rapper, the lawyer, the vixen, all these things. And they go back and they're in a condition, in a situation where they see that it's in their bodies, right? They don't have the time to just josh and smoke blunts and drink and whatever. They're on the plantation, and they got like 7 days in the book to get back, but they're not free from their physical obligations, right? And so now they understand. The basketball player may understand why he's a little stronger than most, right? Why he doesn't respond well to people telling him what to do. The sisters who are forced to be with child, right, are a little, why they over nurture. And what I've learned and what really continues to come to me from that book is that we are conditioned to believe that our ancestors were enslaved, which was not true. That they were slaves, which is not true. They were enslaved. That was their condition.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the level and the degree of that enslavement, we shouldn't be here. So instead of the slave trauma, the slave porn, the constant sort of like, the pain of it all, why don't we center the resilience? Well, the things that they did to make it through, because that's our medicine. It is only in the interest of those who continue to exploit us for us to only focus on the negative side of the condition, right? We're living testaments, right? That they did not succeed in their conditioning. And so whatever medicine that kept them loving and learning and educating and teaching and moving forward is our wisdom to use. But we have to look at it from a lens of what is this resilient practice? Sure, yeah, it was a long day, but how did they get through? What Omeros were they making? Right? What were those songs really like when you in it? Right? I think military people know what it is to like do cadence, right? To help your breath going, right? But what is it to hold on to culture over time? Even our, hoodoo cultures or whatever, through those secrets, those codes, those underground ways of being. Right, to liberate yourself under all these conditions, right? So if we can shift the frame to this sort of like, yes, there was obviously some physical, emotional, psychological stuff that is horrible. If it happened to anybody, it'd be ridiculous. But we survived. So what medicine did we get from it? And then the other piece is, what is it that we can leave behind? Right, growing up Caribbean and West Indian in New York was beautiful, because it's a huge population of Guyanese and Caribbean folks. So, but traveling around, some of it naturally, and this is because I'm a performer, but I think that when you're once removed from the land of the place where your parents were raised, you perform what you see, right? This is what it means to be Guyanese. It means to be Caribbean. It's what it means to be from the South. If you were raised someplace other than the South, and then you go back to that place, and you see those things expressed in their natural environment. And some of those things you don't have to carry forward. You know what I'm saying? There's certain things, I don't have to do that no more, right? I know myself enough to be like, that was cool for then, I get it, but I'm good on that. Or this other thing, be like, oh, I'm gonna amplify that. I'm gonna do more of that, right? Because I need it to fit in these times. So the more that you know about where you come from without looking at it from judgment, right? The more you can be like, I didn't even know there was medicine inside of these subtle things, right? My grandmother, same one that's 99 today, Cleopatra Scotland, every first snow, she would put a cup outside for us to eat the snow, right? She drinks what's called bush tea to this day, a bunch of herbs. That's nasty to if you don't know what you're looking at, right? But she's 99 years old. 99 years old. Right? That tea is doing something for her, right? When she has dreams, she applies the wisdom of those dreams she had a dream once that she should only drink boiled water. And to that, it's been 30 years. She's only drinking boiled water because she trusts her intuition in that way. So we got to start looking at the way that people navigated life. Good and what we judge as good and bad, and understand that we can access all those things. That person that was a millionaire or a person who was an entrepreneur in your lineage, you can call on them when you got to start a business. Call on them and be like, help me. I don't know this doesn't feel, what is this, right? Ask them to come to you and teach you how to, that person who was a nurturer, that person who shifted careers midway through their life, right? That person who was an athlete, that person who was a doctor, that person who was the person everybody came to and told all their troubles. Go to them with your troubles. Because it's nice if you have human beings in this life to rock with, or who could listen to you. But it's doubly nice when you go to your ancestors, because you know they are waiting to hear from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate all our listeners, but we know it's going to be a portion of people who listen to us while they're moving, washing dishes, folding clothes, where they might miss a couple of things. And there's a couple of things that you said that I want to go back to the family so they really make sure they pick up on. So we had a podcast where we started off the show, I talked about Kanye West getting flack about slavery being a choice. And the reason why I didn't get, bent out of shape by that comment or take it as disrespectful is because my Odu is one where the power of choice is amplified. So And what I said then was, if they didn't make the choice to endure what they endured, then the alternative is none of us are here today to have this conversation, or to laugh, to chase money, to be rappers, to cry over things that are insignificant, or whatever the case may be. So one of the things with that, that we got to understand when we're talking about generational curses, is that some of us are here to break those generational curses, and we don't. So then somebody else has to come, and then somebody else has to come, and we keep repeating that cycle over and over and over again until somebody breaks the cycle. Now, when you understand it through the lens of we choose to come here through our ancestor, through our blood lineage, all you have to do is not do that. And then the next person who's born through your direct lineage, because they won't have that foundation, has a better chance of not doing that. That's how the cycle is broken. I think a lot of times we talk about breaking ancestral or generational curses because it's like, oh, I didn't do it, then it's broken. Well, perspective, we talked about that word perspective. The reason why it's broken is because you're less likely to pass that on to those who come directly through you. And hopefully you have that good relationship with those cousins and siblings around you that they look at you and decide that they're going to do the same thing. And then the people who come after that, they're going to start doing different things. Another thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on, because it hits home for me, which you talked about diabetes, for instance, or illnesses, but you specifically use diabetes. And what does that mean? Because as priests, we understand that disease either has a medical foundation or a medical reason, or it has a spiritual. Now, when I got my Ishe fire, I was told you are the one the ancestors sent. Then when my son came, my Esentaye, his Esentaye talked about he came for me.
Mm-hmm.
Then I also was told about there was a sickness that was destroying my family. That sickness was diabetes, right? So I came here to have the sweetness of life, the joy of life, to experience things because the lineage, the ancestors before me weren't having those experiences, maybe not taking advantage of those experiences. So I came to be a break in that chain and then give birth to those who would do different. So I want people to really understand how a lot of times that we'll say things and to them it's like pie in the sky. Yeah, I kind of get it. But I want to make sure they actually see that and understand what that looks like in an actual earthly experience.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. They're all signposts and really important. Going back to the Kanye thing, I mean, you know, he needs to say something inflammatory so he can stay relevant. And what he tripped on was devoid of a context. Being raised by academics, you know, I feel like sometimes he just didn't read the things that he needed to read. And and you sometimes can't control the what, but you can always have influence on the how, right? And so our resistance existed in us knowing and understanding the how. And so even you can say I'm gonna break something, but if you break something that we know these universal laws in a violent way, then its opposite has to then manifest, right? So you don't necessarily want to really be careful on your hows so that you're creating a habit or a way or an example, right? So if you're here to experience the sweetness, you don't want to go to extremes on that, right? Because then you know what I'm saying, you want to amplify it for your relationship with your son so he knows that life can be sweet.
Absolutely.
Right? But he's only going to appreciate it because he watches you navigate the bitter.
Absolutely.
In a way that's not abusive. In a way that's not like blaming or victimness, right? You're looking for that. You know, you're taking your orogbo because you know that after bitter comes sweet and after sweet comes bitter, and that's just life. Right. And to have an active dialogue with him in your actions, not what you say, but how you move through it, to let yourself in front of your son be like, this is disappointing, and I love you. Right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This is really challenging, and we can still have some fun. This is
Absolutely.
unexpected, and you know what I'm saying. You can introduce him to the, like, it doesn't have to be, because there were some that jumped full force off the ship. It was like, not for me.
Right.
And there were others who, you know, who poisoned themselves or who did these things. So we it's not a monolithic experience,
Right.
right? So you can be the one who's going to be the vegan and take care of your health and do the things because that's what's right for you. But I imagine that you want to set an example and be like, and you need to do what's right for you. And understand that these are your parameters, because if you work and chase too much and don't get the authentic sweetness of life, you could have this particular illness which you have a propensity for, right? And you can't judge the people who are now, you know, elders to you, who you can see are not eating well, right? It's not a reason to judge them or not love them. Just show them what you can do, because you don't have to worry about losing your eyesight. You don't have to worry about, you know what I'm saying, you know, taking your insulin, right? But love them through it, because you came to be in service to their wisdom.
Absolutely.
You know, Baba, this is a beautiful episode for me. I love listening to you speak. I told Fafore a while ago, I was like, man, I want to be able to speak like the Ojugbona. The way the Ojugbona speaks is, I can tell that you are an emotional person, that you are sensitive, as you say. The way you speak with vulnerability. And I love that, because I came from a place where that was considered weak. And so for me to be able to see that from you, it gives me courage to be vulnerable, at least with my brothers. You know, I know that I can be vulnerable with you, with Fafore, with Baba, and things like that. So
And
it's a
that's
beautiful episode
that's
for me, man.
again,
I'm glad that you're here.
I'll show you. I'm glad to be of service. I'm glad to be a vessel for that, you know, at best we're reflections. At our best we are reflections. And I have worked very, very hard to change that conditioning that vulnerability is weakness. And some of my early, you know, my first craft, obviously being a performer, being on stage, you know, letting the audience see you move through all the things, right? Definitely set up the practice for that, right? But I was definitely closed off in my real life. I was like, it's not safe in my real life. And I got a reading once that said that, you know, the career stuff was, the acting space was cool and all, and that I was definitely fulfilled by sort of like being fully in the space and doing my thing. But I need that type of safety, courage, all the things that you talked about in my day to day. And it scared me, terrified me. I was like, why would I do that? Like, why would I subject myself to that? Because I grew up with people yelling at each other, people threatening real violence or actual violence happening. I grew up with, like, do what I say or else. I get up with a look that would not just put you in your place, but like make sure that you stayed underneath somebody, right? And I grew up with masculinity being projected as this power over people all the time. And I don't know if y'all have seen this film Bruiser on Hulu. You must watch this film.
On Hulu, yeah.
Bruiser. It's the same people who did Moonlight, but it's a meditation on masculinity, fatherhood, and violence. And these brothers had no tools. Vulnerability was absolutely a weakness, and they had a history. I'm not gonna get into it, but it's worth it. Bruiser, and we'll talk about it once you watch it. But I appreciate you acknowledging that, I will share, because it's a daily walk to, like, literally breathe through the conditioned response, right? And I keep using the word and soften into, like, getting an assessment. It's one thing to be like, oh, as a priest, you got to stay in the middle, right? That's a cool theory. But when you're conditioned to defend, to take everything as a threat, when you're conditioned to make sure that you don't look like a fool, right? You're gonna do these things and think that that's you. But if you can give yourself some space, small spaces, to be like, what if I don't react that way? What if it's not really a threat, right? What if, when Baba talks about, you know, the Shaolin monks, when they're threatened, their lives are threatened, they laugh because they know how to kill, right? We know we're conditioned to be angry and empathetic, right? There's so much in between that we have to discover. I used to carry around sheets of paper with names of feelings on them because I had the feelings, I was experiencing them, I just couldn't name them. So in any different circumstance, I would look and be like, what am I feeling? What is this? What is this? Oh, that's disappointment. Oh, that's okay. Okay, it's not just mad, right? And every mat that I've been on, especially in Africa, I've never walked away. Mostly initiations, they were like, "You have anger," and I was like, "Tell me something I don't know." But then I had to do the work and be like, "What does that mean?" Right? I mean, I know what it looks like, right? I know how to perform it, but what does that? Where's that come from? And I did some research, and I was like, "Oh, anger is usually and rage is unresolved grief." Right. So what small deaths, what things did I not have space to like actively say that this is sad? What relationships did I have to cut off, or did I have to like feel like I didn't have a choice in how it went that I just never grieved around? So it's a self-exploration, and this healing through the ancestors is only as valuable as your commitment and devotion to self-awareness without judgment. Right. And people will be like, oh, that's the shadow work, right? Call it whatever you want, call it. But it's really like, where can I give myself a little bit of time to not be afraid of the consequences and really explore how I feel right now? And then you get to the place where like, where can I share that? Because once you practice it with yourself, like anything, then when you're amongst other people, it's a little easier. Right. But it's dangerous if you only practice it with other people. You got to be with yourself. Right. And there's another thing that's, as priests, I want y'all to really hold on to this. I've never been in a space since becoming an Awo, not once over the last 13 years, where I didn't learn something from a priest who was in the room. I always walk away learning something, whether it's a little piece of this about a ritual, whether it's information about Ifa, but I always take the words of priests as divine. Right. It may not resonate with me. I may not like it, especially if it's a critique, but I'm going to take some time and reflect and like, where is the honesty in that? Where is the thing that I'm not seeing in my own face? How can I digest that, integrate that, ask more questions about it? But I've never been in a space with priests without walking away. One priest, a group of priests, without walking away with new self-reflecting questions.
Right. We talk a lot about generational trauma. And we speak heavily about that in our communities, and we speak about it from the understanding that that trauma is passed down, that it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. How can reverencing our ancestors help us to break the cycle of passing down those generational traumas to our kids and our grandkids? I mean, what can we be doing as people, as regular people? What can we be doing, and how does that help us?
Well, ask for support, right? Once you identify what this thing is, you have to know the whole details of it, right? But absolutely go to your ancestor altar and ask for support. Hey, I'm noticing this theme in our family. I'm noticing that we yell a lot, right? We argue a lot. We call it conversation. We try to prove our points. We talk over each other often, and it doesn't feel good because nothing gets resolved. But then we trauma bond, right? Because nobody can argue like us. What might be a way for me you're asking your ancestors to interrupt this, right? You ask that question. And you listen for the answer, right? In your lived experience, and be clear, be like, show it to me in ways that only make sense to me, that I don't have to question. Help me. I know that for me, before even coming into the practice, I was so grateful for my friends who had children in like the mid 20s, early 30s, because I was in the framework that you only raise a child in this way, right? That this action justified this reaction or punishment. And so I got to watch my friends do it differently. I'd be like, oh, you didn't have to yell at it? What? What does that even, what? What does that even mean? right? Or when I first got to the place where I was seeing my parents as human beings, right? And I remember that when I was upset at my mom, and I felt bad. I felt great guilt. I was like, I can't be mad at my mom. I talk to my mom every day. What does that mean that I'm mad at my mom? And a good friend of mine was like, I remember when that happened. It's I mean, they didn't have a language of like individualization and all the things, but I was like, oh, there's another way to do this. And so you can ask for the ancestors, you can talk to the ancestors as if they're in front of you and be like, give me another way to do this. I had a really profound meditation that I was led through by a sound healer. She did some other stuff, and she was like, she took me through this meditation where she was like, I want you to invite all of your ancestors into this. The way she described it was a waterfall of light, right? So imagine Niagara Falls, and there's this huge circle of your ancestors. You don't have to know them all, but they're all related to you. And so she had me visualize that, and she said, now I want you to let them know that you forgive them for whatever they may have done or however they were judged or the lives that they wish that they whatever, that you forgive them and that you love them and that you see them and that you appreciate every choice that they made. Because if they made anything different, you wouldn't be here. And then after you sort of sit that in your body, she said, let them know that you're thankful for their experience, but you've come to do things differently and you need their support. Right. And that was born out of a conflict that I found myself in. Because we talk about like, you know, whatever's irritating you outside of yourself, you know, it's inside you, right? And we from this like individualistic perspective, very Western, very colonial, we assume, oh, it must have been something I did, right? At some point, I just forgot that I did this thing that this person's doing to me now, blah, blah, blah. But it may not be that. That action outside of yourself may be activating an ancestor inside you, right? That's where the resonance is. And so again, you don't have to know all the details, but you know it's deep because you can't shake it. Right. So you go to your ancestors, you be like, I don't know what this is, and I feel this way about it. Be honest, be 100%. Right. And if there was somebody in my lineage, if one of y'all didn't feel seen, didn't feel loved, you know, was judged for your sexual orientation, whatever, right? I'm calling on you and letting you know that I see you, I love you, I forgive you, I appreciate you, I wish I give you light, right? But help me to heal this thing so that I can resonate differently. So what I would, to distill it, I would say, don't take all of your social conflicts as individual. Sometimes they're collective. Right? Listen for that resonance and then take that resonance and the little information you have to your ancestors and be like, listen, this is what I'm experiencing. If it's one of y'all that's looking for resolution, right? I'm here for it because apparently I chose it. Right? But whatever it is you need it to be, and you can really think through, like, what is it I need to forgive? What is it about what this person doing that's really irritating me? And perhaps that's the thing that you didn't get seen for or wasn't loved for or were punished for. And I found that to be super transformative. So I have a question for y'all, unless you got another question. I wish.
No, go ahead. You got us. You got us now. We're gonna turn it around.
So what has this process of building this podcast, how has it transformed your journey as priests? How has it made you different? You know, how has it informed your journey as young priests, not just priests, but like really young priests?
You know, for me, this is an exercise for me in vulnerability because I'm a nervous person by nature. This has helped me to be vulnerable. It's helped me to expand my perspective, to see things from different perspectives, from different people. We've talked to different people from different traditions, different schools of thought. So just opening myself up to try to, like you say, soften myself into being vulnerable, being emotional, being sensitive to what's going on around me. So it's really for me, it's an exercise in vulnerability, and I think I know that I need to be softened. So that's what's happening for me. I feel like I am softening up. That rough outer edge is being chipped away at. So yeah, that's what it is for me.
I should. All right.
I say for me, it has helped me to step into what I came here to do.
Mm-hmm.
From every way, natal chart, different things. I've been told that I've come here to be a healer. And I didn't want that responsibility. I was like, I want to be a priest. Let me, push myself forward. And in the process, maybe a couple people around me, cool. What it has done, it has brought me closer to, it's basically made the world smaller. And it's put me in a position where I've communicated with a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life. It's helped me to accept what I came here to do, slowly but surely, because I really realized that this is a beautiful walk, a beautiful path, and man, it brings me so much joy. But if it wasn't for the process of this podcast and being able to talk to a wide variety of people, it's not something that I would, run to. It'd be something I would go into, hesitantly or kicking and screaming. But it really let me see that there's a need for, spirituality throughout the world. We looked online, you can find a podcast about how to make money. You can make a podcast, whether it's doing options, whether it's, selling this, that, or the other, real estate. But spirituality the space is just not there, So to quote a great philosopher by the name of Tupac Shakur, we peeped the weakness in the game and sold it.
I can dig it. I can dig it. No, and I appreciate y'all holding the space. I think there needs to be a space to slow down, to reflect, to be in conversation. And I appreciate how y'all structure, the whole thing. And the integration, right? So that people don't feel distant. For the layman, for the people who are not initiated, to listen deeply and understand that these are real life experiences. And yes, we have gone through things, and we continue to study, and we are students to be in service of our destiny and our purpose. And we don't know all the things. We're not here to know everything. But the things that do stand out for us, for our people, it's important to amplify it and to be self-determined inside of it. The other piece that I want to advice to give to those, what they can do is write letters to your ancestors. Write letters to them, either thanking them or frustrated letters. So I'm like, yo, right? And then you can go back and visit. It's a living document. You can go back and revisit it, right? And see, and do it with your non-dominant hand, right? Some people say there's an exercise where you write the question and you write the answer with your non-dominant hand, right? And it's a little sloppy, right? But there's something about spirit supporting you and guiding your finger and guiding your hand and guiding your heart. And I pray that you both, because this is a big deal for me right now, that you both always have healthy spaces to soften, right? Because I know that if something went down, right, we come from strong stock. We know how to defend and protect and all the things, right? And so that's sort of a medicine that we got from our ancestors because they survived, right? But what are we going to do with this call for emotional maturity? Because we talk about, you get older, and and your body changes. You go to puberty, you can lift more, right? You study, your brain is definitely doing, but we don't talk about what it takes to build emotional maturity, to practice emotional maturity, and to be confident in that. So you can go someplace and the weight you can lift, right? You can go someplace, the book you can read and the science about what you know. But that emotional thing, sometimes we responding like we still 12 years old. And the ancestors want us to be emotionally mature. They want to prepare. They want us to be prepared for the fact that none of us make it out alive. Right. They want us to understand that grieving is for the dead. Saying grieving is a real thing, right? But we can't escape it. So how do we integrate The fact that things die, the day is dying right now. How do we honor that? And then we'll be reborn in the morning. How do we honor that?
Right.
Ashe.
Right.
Ashe. Well, Ojugbona, we greatly appreciate you.
Man.
Man, this is gonna be one of those that you're gonna have to go back. You're gonna have to listen to 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. It's so many gems, so many gems in this. And I thank you. This is special for me because you were the one who gave me my O3. You divined for me at Tay 5. You know. So this is dope. And even though you're not Nigerian, you still give us our food.
Yeah.
So family, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you take notes. Go over it. The way that you honor your ancestors is being true to yourself, being true to what you came here to do, and doing it. To quote Ia Josie, our Luo's wife, she said, "We all came here for an experience, so have the experience." Be true to yourself. Be kind to each other. Be kind to your family. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, life's a journey. Don't forget the map.
I say.
Peace.
Peace.